Okay, guys, so we'll start off. If it's okay, I want to ask you guys, what are some unwanted things, some unwanted experiences that happen when people drink or do drugs that you guys have heard about? What are some things you guys have heard about, some unwanted experiences?
You could have a hangover.
Yeah, okay, you could have a hangover. So you could drink too much and it'll just ruin your weekend. It might even ruin, maybe your chances to do something else that you had planned to do.
You get in trouble with your parents or they pick you up after curfew.
Yep. Okay, that's another thing that can happen for sure. You can get in trouble with your family. You can get arrested. So it can lead to lots of problems. And when people start to drink or do drugs or smoke cigarettes, they don't think about what could happen later on down the line or down a path that they might take. If it's okay with you guys, I want us to turn to a handout and talk about this path that we can go down sometimes when we're not really thinking that it's going to happen that way. So let's take a look at the handout that you guys have. And let's start at the beginning of the path. And what do you guys see there at the beginning of the path?
Never used.
The never used box, right? So that tells you how many teens your age have never used. Now remember we talked about that a little bit in session 1 where we found out that actually most teens are here in the never used. What are the numbers here? And remember, this is for 8th graders, so it's even less for 6th and 7th, okay? So what do you guys see here?
That 71% of teens have never tried alcohol.
Right, okay. And what about for marijuana? What do you guys see there?
It's at 85%.
85%, okay. So this is where most teens are at never used. Some people decide to go down this path. They might head over down the road to experimental use. Now, what does experimental mean?
That they might try it for the first time.
Yeah, you're trying it out.
Trying it for the first time?
Experiment for school, like you're trying to see if it works.
That's right. That's great that you are thinking about how those words match up with stuff that you're already learning. So, yep, trying it the first time, trying it out, maybe even just doing it now and then or just a little bit. That's kind of like what we think when we hear experimental. How does somebody go from no use to experimental use? How does that happen?
Maybe their friends influence them, or they see it on TV or in a song.
Yeah, those are all really powerful messages for teens right now. What you see in music and what you see in your friends are important to you, so sometimes friends can influence you to try something you hadn't done before.
Your fridge.
Your fridge?
Yeah, there's like a lot of beer.
Okay. Yeah. So you might be curious. Teens might wonder what something is like, and they have access to it, and so they want to give it a shot. Okay, well, if you look at the numbers here, do you notice something about the numbers?
They're a lot lower
They're lower.
than what I expected them to be.
Yeah, I know those numbers, a lot of you were really surprised. And those numbers before, from even the first time we talked about it, they really didn't match up with what you see from what you guys were saying, right? It's really surprising. Because sometimes we think that what's right around us is what's happening everywhere, right? But we learned about how actually most teens are in this box, right? In the never used. They're right at the beginning. They haven't gone down that path yet, all right? So now, let's say somebody continues down this path, and then that might lead to problem use. What does problem use mean? What do you guys think?
Somehow it's starting to interfere with their life.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
That they're maybe drinking and it's affecting their grades and it's the home life and it's being more important than it was.
Yeah. Okay, so those are really important things that can start to change in somebody's life and lead to some of those unwanted experiences that we talked about earlier, right? So you could get into trouble with your friends or your family or maybe even at school. So that's what problem use is. What else? Who else has a thought about what is problem use?
The friends you hang with are different. You kind of change the group you're with.
Oh, that's interesting. Tell me a little bit more about that, Anna. What do you mean by that?
Because, like when you start, I notice that when you kind of start doing certain things and some of your best friends start getting on you for doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just easier to go find people that aren't gonna be on you for doing it.
Okay, all right.
And then you just notice that you're not doing the same things you used to be doing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that group tends to be in trouble more with the schools.
Okay, yeah. And you know what, that's a really great example too of what problem use looks like in the real world. Because I was just gonna ask you guys for an example of that. What does that look like when somebody goes from experimenting to problem? Like, what does that look like? And you just mentioned that sometimes it means even your friends might change. It means doing different things that you didn't do before because now you might be drinking more or smoking more or something like that. Okay. So what happens is people start out on this path not thinking that they're going to be going down this road that might get them into trouble. And they'll maybe start out drinking a little bit, trying it out, or on weekends. And maybe then they start drinking a little bit more for other times in their life. And then they start having some problems, like you guys mentioned. And then they think, well, maybe if I drink, I'll forget about my problems. So then it just gets to be more and more complicated. It's kind of like quicksand. When you're in it, you don't notice that you're sinking until you start to try to get out. And when you do that, then it's hard. It's really hard. And that can sometimes lead to what we see at the top of your handout there, and that's addiction. What does addiction mean?
When you're addicted to something.
When you're addicted to something, yeah. What does that mean to you guys?
You need to do it.
You need to do it. Okay, that's a great way to put it, by the way. When you need something, it means your body doesn't work well without it because you're so used to it. So, you know, if you notice here, we have some examples on the handout, too, of what addiction is. What do you guys notice there?
It says that you spend more time using it than actually taking care of your responsibilities that you have.
Okay, okay. And Anna, that was kind of like what you were saying, right? Like sometimes problem use can turn into addiction. Not all the time, but sometimes it can. And that's what happens is all of a sudden it becomes the main thing that you're doing, right? Yeah. Now you guys notice that there aren't any numbers for teens for addiction. Did you notice that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we don't have numbers for teens for addiction, but we do know that for the general population, that means like everybody, it's like somewhere between 3 and 10%.